Hey there, welcome to this fully narrated real-time tutorial where I'm going to take you through my process for creating an illustration like this in Photoshop. In this case, we're going to be drawing this fantasy scene where an elf mage is taking on a giant Cthulhu-esque tentacle monster in some creepy dungeon somewhere. Let's get started, hang out with me, and we'll draw this thing from start to finish. Let's go. Alright, my name's Tim Mcburnie. I've been a professional artist for 20 years and a professional drawing teacher for 10 years, and I'm here to help you draw stuff from your imagination and master the craft of line and color illustration. Now this is going to be, as I said, a fully real-time narrated tutorial. I'm just going to watch a bit of sped up stuff while I do the intro here. This is not going to be a fully edited, fast-paced YouTube video with lots of jokes. This is the real deal. This is how I actually create this stuff. This is how I think actual artists create stuff. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of patience, and that's a big part of what I want to share with you in this tutorial. Again, it's pretty long, almost 4 hours long. But overall, that's actually a pretty sort of quick illustration when we're talking about, creating a scene with a lot of effects and, those sorts of things going on. If you're interested in improving your line and color illustration, I recommend you check out my quick start guide on line and color, which just goes over the basics of a lot of the techniques I'm using here. Now, again, we add a few techniques at the end of this to make things look a little bit sort of more cool and atmospheric, but I really think if you're starting out your journey as an artist, the most important thing you can do is master the basics, where it's all about coming up with ideas and just focusing on the drawing and basic color. So check out that quick start guide if you're interested in that. But other than that, let's get started. Let's jump into this tutorial. All right, let's draw something. Let's plan something. So I've got an idea. I'm gonna have a go at the thumbnail. And again, it's just gonna be a chilled out drawing experience. So hang out, do some sketching, draw with me. Again, it's not gonna be high powered, super entertaining YouTube action or anything like that. We're just gonna be doing some drawing, a lot of which will involve me not saying much because I'm thinking. But I think that's part of it, right? You got to be relaxed to draw. That's pro tip. Got to be chill. So again, I got an idea, but I don't know whether it's going to work. So I'm just going to try and feel it out. So, big part of that I feel like is drawing poorly. Just means you don't ever have to worry if it's not very good, if we kind of start with it not being good. So yeah, I don't know if I often sort of just do the thumbnail phase on my own, right? Because it's kind of, I'm often doing too much thinking really to like do a good job. Sort of even given the very sort of limited thinking that I'm and talking that I'm doing normally when I'm doing these, right? Normally with the thumbnail, right? We're doing even less of that. have another go at trying to figure out how to do this. So yeah, it's a trick with having vague ideas. Right. Figuring out like how that camera angle is going to work is kind of tricky. So again, it's a secret basically. Not gonna tell you what it is until I can figure out whether or not it's likely to work. So again, still thumbnail-y, right? I don't know how sort of finished or polished. Right, this is gonna end up. Get that sort of action. Really, this is just needs to be simple, sort of from one point, right? So again, just a bunch of lines at the moment. Again, it's a secret. Not gripping television, sorry. But yeah, I think this is often the most challenging phase, right? This is where you kind of like stuff sort of gets real, right? Is this idea I got in my head, is it gonna go anywhere? Am I gonna be able to do anything with it? basically got, I mean, the basic idea is, I sort of had the idea for, it's just like a sort of very standard sort of D&D style action, sort of dungeon crawling image. I've got like a guy here and he's fighting a giant tentacle monster, but I want it to be all sort of, again, in my brain, it's kind of like, it's all dusty and dark and you can't see much, so all of this will be kind of like faded out, and there'll be kind of, yeah, like there's like a single guy who, again, will be a little bit like, not like a warrior, and he's got like sort of one tentacle, right? It's kind of wrapped around his arm. And I think he's like casting a spell with this other hand. I don't know what's going to happen with his kind of face. But the idea is play around with sort of motion. Alright, I want this like potentially some sort of cape, and the other big thing I want to sort of play around with is the idea of kind of depth, right? So to get like the depth going here, right? And again, sort of depth going there into the distance. But yeah, again, I don't really know like what will sort of sell the shot, right? But again, he's going to sort of be standing roughly in the foreground. And again, I want like the shadow underneath to kind of tell a lot of the story, right? And again, it's going to have some sort of something going on. So yeah, it's not quite complete yet in terms of an idea, right? Like there's sort of a vague idea. But, you know, I think one of the problems is when we sort of have these vague ideas, when I have these vague ideas, right? You know, that there's like crucial sort of ideas such as like, where is the character facing? Are they facing us? Are they facing away from us? Like, what's going on? So again, trying to get some sort of dynamic lines going. But yeah, I don't know whether the character should be like facing that way. Yeah, I think so. Facing away. So this arm is kind of like caught up in tentacle, right? And this arm is like, I don't know what's happening with that arm. Part of this also is I'm sort of keen to try and create like I really want it to kind of be a little bit of a dynamic pose. Maybe play with that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of that is gonna be possible. So again, still thumbnail phase, right? And I've got this thumbnail template. You know, that's one of the sort of things I often use. I think often it's just you know, like I have the process that kind of works for me in terms of, you know, like I'm used to kind of drawing little thumbnails in things like this, and it keeps me sort of really focused on the frame. Again, I've got that background sort of toned down. Let's have, so we're going to have, it's going to be more tentacles, right? Because again, we've got to sort of sell the threat and have this sort of feeling of chaos. So I want maybe, again, like sort of other ones sort of going for him. Right, and a feeling of sort of danger. But again, there's obviously like a big sort of strong sort of movement this way. Right, and he's kind of got, again, I'm sort of playing around with the idea of like, again, sort of cape. Again, he's sort of sitting somewhere over there. So a lot of this is just trying to sort of block out the pose, figure out sort of like how much overlap there is. But I want it to feel like he's kind of building this thing, like, right, there's sort of a counterattack. So I feel like, again, it's probably important to kind of have a bit of like space for that. So sort of behind this, right, got a cloak here again. And again, good to have, again, some sort of plenty of stuff like flying. So again, 15 minutes in, really I need to have this kind of sorted in probably half an hour, otherwise this will drag on and this will like never really get where I want. So again, I'm using sort of pretty stand-in characters, right? Sort of things that I've kind of pretty much sort of designed before, right? I'm just adding like one or two little touches and things. It's tricky because, you know, one of the things that tends to happen, you know, if we sort of do too much work at the thumbnail phase, or if you have like a really rough thumbnail, it can be easy to do the next phase because I'm not trying to match anything. As soon as we got like a big, you know, as I've sort of posed it out and stuff, then all of a sudden the next phase is like, let's true that up, but, you know, I'm going to be trying to match it, and so it can actually be even trickier. So again, going to try and play around with this design a little bit, so it's kind of like, again, like sort of a land sort of squid weird thing. right? Something Cthulhu-esque from the depths. All right, so again, it's sort of coming from here, going around there, but we still got some of these, right, other ones, right? And this feeling of chaos, right, is super, super important. Again, this is probably too ambitious given the time I have for this, but we'll see. See how it goes. So again, this thing probably doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel big enough. Yeah. Chaos. So yeah, not sure. I feel like this the guy might be a bit, right? Like maybe putting it a little bit more in the foreground. Might help sell the scale a bit. So you can see that totally messes everything up. But again, that's what's good about thumbnails, right? So it messes up that tangent. So again, there's two ways to do thumbnails, right? What I'm doing at the moment is I'm kind of, again, making sure I'm planning the right. I'm planning the action that I'm going to create next, so it'll be a pretty rough thumbnail. The other one is where, maybe I'm sort of experimenting, playing around with stuff, and I'll kind of finish them off a little bit more, right? I'll do another pass. It won't take that long, relatively speaking, but just helps to sort of make sure if I come back to it, I'm sort of remembering everything. So again, this cloak thing is again, it's really hard to know with that stuff. Sometimes it's like, sometimes you're better off not planning it out too much. Other times it's like, just spend forever sort of drawing it. Right, so again, I like the idea of maybe having, again, multiple layers of sort of cloak-like stuff and maybe some other kind of sort of bits and pieces, so it's like a bit more of a, again, complicated, like sort of mirror some of the stuff that's going on there. That's kind of, I think I have to move on. But yeah, should be able to define some of this stuff. At the black and white stage as well. That might actually be able to go up a bit. That shadow is sort of going over there. All right. Just think about tonally what's happening. Again, when in doubt, let's just block out the figures and the action. I sort of want to have, again, I want to have a lot of it be kind of dark. Again, you know, the major consideration here is like, is this thing, like, is it black behind? Or is it really dark behind? Is this thing kind of, or is this thing sort of dark on light? Right? Like, what's going on? That's the sort of real question from a tonal point of view, right? Like, what's gonna work well? I mean, I don't really know. So again, I'm just sort of roughing things in, making some decisions. Right, that's going to be like some sort of magical thing. Might be like, right, so yeah, you know, like the whole thing is going to be sort of basically dark, but I have a feeling like it would be good to kind of have the, again, like the background be really dark, right? So it's sort of, like it's coming out of the nothing. So let's have a go at that, right? So if this, everything behind it. Now, we mean, again, probably the figure will be pretty light. Yeah, that's it. And it'll sort of like gradiate right towards the character, who will be quite light in comparison, I guess. Again, there'll be like a pretty strong kind of read on the face and stuff. So I'm just kind of hacking away at, there is, and he's got this kind of, again, the vertical eye. All right. Hard light, airbrush. right? So it's kind of like it's the plan anyway. But yeah, maybe there could be like some other creepy sort of eyes in the distance, right? Yeah, anyway, that's the idea. That's kind of what I had in my head. It's a total mess. We got to clean it up. Let's jump into that now. So, the process of doing this is getting this from one thing to another is pretty simple, right? Just gonna select that thing, Shift Control C, which does a copy merged, and then we'll paste it in here, right? And this is a 12,000 pixel wide canvas, so you can see this thing is pretty big to begin with, right? Like it's not a small image. There we go. So, I'm just going to transform it a tiny bit. So the trick here is how much can we, like how many layers can we get away with, right? Because I feel like it could be, it's very possible to kind of waste a huge amount of time with layers on this. Yeah, let's think about it. But I'm kind of thinking, where's a brush? It's a 10. Yeah, like I'm kind of thinking like it might be good to just kind of have like, right, this character on a layer with this tentacle, and then like maybe I can kind of have it like sort of end there, and that'll be one layer. And no, I think it probably might be like all of this, right? Like that whole thing. Right, like this is all one layer. And maybe this is a layer. And maybe that's a layer. So all this is one layer. 1, 2, 3. Right, have some sort of, like some of these rocks on the same layer as that. Right, so I'm thinking maybe something like that, and then basically everything else is one layer, is a second layer, except I'll make sure that like I can select out all this dark and do a, you know, sort of where basically wherever there's dark, that I'll be able to sort of have the tentacle guy on a layer above that, right? So I won't have to go in there by hand and sort of do all that stuff. But I think that's all I need. Let's give that a shot. Just trying to think about which brush to use. I think that'll be right. All right, so again, we're going to hit sort of low opacity. All right, so I can kind of rough this in. All right, so we've kind of got, I'm just going to make sure, again, this is, again, mostly from a comfort standpoint, right? This gives me something to do, make sure, right, I've got a basis for everything. I'm just doing simple mannequin, right, the spine's going up there, right, that I'm going to have bang, bang. Triple checking I'm actually drawing on the right layer. Got the big nose for some reason. So neck there, is that connecting to the right spot? Look, I think that will be okay. Right, so we got so many stupid lines everywhere, but I think we got shoulder, right, bang, bang, shoulder, shoulder, right, and like is that kind of distance the same as that? Seems like that could be the case. Is that plausible? From a proportional standpoint, all right, these are all the important things that we need to ask. All right, I've got a fist here. Boom. Deltoid, bicep. All right, it's all going to be covered up. So again, if I want to save time, right, really good way to do it is don't draw stuff that is going to be covered by clothes where I can. Again, this guy looks like he's turned into an elf of some kind. So going to make him sort of relatively skinny. Again, here we've got forearm, cylinder, right? This will be the hand. Don't know, some sort of, again, depends how much time I have, right? Whether that could easily just be a fist, and that could save a whole pile of time. Not trying to draw not trying to draw hands in a demo sort of situation, right? So basically, yeah, we're looking down at him just based on where the horizon line is and everything. We're looking way down at that kind of belt sort of area. Right, it's got some sort of tunic or thing like that on. So is that leg too much? Right, got leg, right, knee, So these sort of marks, right, are just really for me to kind of gain some confidence, try and figure out what's where. try and keep some of the energy of these sort of forms that was in there. Got belt buckle. That's right arm. Maybe there's like sort of some. Maybe there's a sword. He's got like a. Not using it though. Yeah. All right, and yeah, this thing is kind of going around. Around. And up. So we've got to think a little bit more about that form there. All right, as we sort of wrap. All right, that around. And again, I was going to sort of have almost like a kind of poncho thing, right? Like within that. Again, lots of overlap. Just thinking about what might be under there. So again, we're not getting much from this, but I think it's sort of helping. And again, this is. All right, let's try. This again, quick tip, we can just J, right, sort of try and replicate that a little bit. So again, this there'll be some drawing over the top of this, right? It's not, these are not final lines, but so sort of help to merge down. All right, bring that line down, line kind of here. Again, draw through. Alright, so that's one layer. And again, same with this. Control J. Let's move that up. Let's warp that. Cheat, cheat, cheat. But often, if we kind of start with a nice clean line, right? so much other stuff kind of follows. And again, just anything that's going to slow us down. What else was going to be on that? I don't think anything. Maybe that. Alright, so what do we got? So that's one layer. Yeah, basically everything else is another layer. Let's merge those. Make a layer. See if we can replicate some of these lines. So again, make sure we're drawing on the right layer. So just really getting position here. Position, position, and yeah, that like the next phase of this is like the most terrifying, right? Because as soon as I get rid of this little sketchy thing, the whole thing is going to look awful and lifeless. I take time to sort of get the finished drawing working in right in any kind of similar way. So again, that's where experience comes in. Right, we gotta not let it freak us out. Bam, bam. Bam. And a big part of this phase is understanding, like, what does the thumbnail sketch give us? Right, like, what is its value? And I think early on, I think like many people, would sort of try and like be like do that thing where, you know, I said we're gonna like get that, you know, we're gonna trace it and it's gonna look awful, right? And then, you know, it's very easy to sort of then say, oh, you know, well, that just means that, you know, the sketches are amazing and finished drawings are not amazing. And I don't think that's true, right? I don't think that's the trick to it. The trick is understanding, like, what's good about the sketch, right? What are we gonna bring with us, and what do we have to recreate? Tracing. So again, apologies, I don't have a camera on the Cintiq, so you can see sort of what I'm doing. Goes onto there. So again, I'm kind of interpreting what's going on, but yeah, there's a fair bit of tracing when it comes to those you know, like sort of tracing from here to here, right? You could draw the whole thing in, right? But I'm just kind of tracing over it and right, keep putting that in. Now what was going on here? There's like a whole bunch of messy stuff. Oh man, I forgot. Like what is that? What was going on here? Again, this shadow, I feel like is key. Getting weird Photoshop brush artifacting. That often happens when we're at the wrong resolution, wrong zoom, sorry. See, it's kind of like stepping. Yeah, so the basic idea there is, sorry, I kind of stopped mid-thought as I'm drawing. The basic idea is that the thumbnail doesn't give us much, right? It kind of gives us position and placement, but if you want your next drawing to have any energy, you kind of got to just view it as, right, as a completely new drawing, right, as a completely new entity, right? It's a new sort of thing, and we have to make it good, not sort of, again, not compare it to anything else. So there's probably, alright, some sort of tentacles going around the place, right, and some rocks and things in the background. I think I wanted some like some other bits and pieces. Alright, what happens if we get rid of that? Yeah, so see, it doesn't look very good. What are we missing? Missing a bit of stuff here. Alright, so I can keep that there, right? But we can just kind of really, right, like really sort of fade it out. Or we can get rid of it entirely. I mean, it's really hard to know what to do there. So what I'll do is let's merge that down. What's on there? Oh yeah. So am I missing anything? No, that's pretty much it. Alright, so the trick here is basically you have to add detail to everything quickly, because again, it's still sketchy sort of thing. I'm just going to erase this out a little bit. Again, just kind of, this is the background. Because, none of these lines are that good. They're sort of a little bit dead, right? But they're still lines, right? They represent the shapes that are important. Right, same with this. Right, kind of let it fade out a little bit. And there, we've sort of got a good plan. And that's taken us about 50 minutes, right? So about an hour to get to that point. And yeah, so now the next step is you can zoom up a little bit more. I do have this again like above on a second monitor, and I'm gonna sort of make sure that I can see that quite nicely, quite easily. I might do a flip horizontal, see what happens. Doesn't look that great. But I mean, it's not the worst. I just feel like we do need to sort of counteract. All right. Yeah, just really think about what's sort of happening there. So again, this is where it's just like, I'm relying on spidey sense, right? I'm relying on little spidey sense in the background to be like, is this gonna be enough, right? Am I gonna want to play around with something, right? Is the flip okay? Because it really is kind of leaning, but I feel like that's kind of probably like it's almost like he's sort of being pulled that way. So I think it's okay. I'm gonna flip it and basically just ignore the idea of trying to make the drawing work heaps, right? Because again, just don't have heaps of time. So I've got the right layer. Let's get rid of that. And what I'll try and do is basically just draw this like this. This is probably the best way to think about it. So can we just sort of, not zoom up, not think too much about how much detail we need to be where. I'm going to go from talking about detail, right? I'm going to go all the way up to sort of 100% dark though, right? Because I was on sort of 50% or 40% or something. Just because that, what that sort of does is it mostly just allows me to be a little bit softer. Again, thinking about the hair. Right, being pretty careful with it. Alright, so again, got a poncho thing. Just sort of going there. Got this line here, just sort of going there. Gonna sort of be a bit like non-specific with some of these marks. Again, I feel like that's part of, how this particular sort of speed has to go, right? It has to be a little bit. So I'm sort of being sort of sketchy here because, this stuff, don't want it to be too tight. Again, travel worn cape. So we have to play around with how to it's going out. I'm just going to leave that though, I'll do it later. Yeah, travel worn cape. Try and create as much texture as possible. Again, that's going onto there. That's going onto there. And again, we're going to get a little bit more sort of shadow there. So again, trying to tell that story of the cape, right, being a little bit ragged. Again, extending it down there. I don't know what that little bit is, right, but it's again, just helping me fill in those details. I'm just going to put in a few more little, again, indications of shadow, push that. Again, let's get this, bang, shadow under there. Again, this is going to be something that has that. Yeah, something like that. So indicating roughly, that there's some sort of cloth there, right? Bang, bang. So we got an arm here, arm there, and then this is taken up by tentacle. We got tentacle over here. And some sort of arm wrap. Shadow there. Let's put shadow here. Shadow under there. Again, they're not. None of those are sort of real like shadows. You know what I mean? They're just sort of. It's more like They call it sort of spotting blacks in sort of Western inking, where we're kind of just sort of putting some blacks there, and they kind of correlate to where shadows are going to be, but a big part of it is kind of just making it look cool, right? It's design. So, just, again, I'm not saying like, oh, that's, perfectly placed or whatever. I'm not entirely sure about that, but the idea is that we are, you don't have to be beholden to like 100% realism when you do this, right? The idea is that it's not just kind of a smooth tentacle, right? It's like a creepy tentacle stuff. Again, so shadow here, maybe push a bit of shadow stuff there. 1, 2, 3. So we sort of got little finger, right? Ring finger. Got thumb, giant fleshy pad, middle finger, index finger, and there's one simple blocky hand, right, that will probably do the job. Yeah, pretty proud of that. Right, let's plus this face, right? Let's really lean into this. I kind of like the face here, right? It's kind of big nose, sort of squinty eye. It's got like a old school sort of 80s D&D, 80s fantasy movie headband thingy on. It's kind of cool. Again, it's kind of going to go in there, and then this stuff is going behind it. Right, let's push that ear. Push that, right. Just make sure that silhouette is like solid. That's it. So yeah, putting a lot of effort into that, I think will sort of help a fair bit. Thumb, index finger, knuckle, middle finger, ring finger. Hand might be too small. Let's probably need to make it a bit bigger. It's going to be a little bit more broken with it. This one's not turning out as well. Probably because, probably best to draw the thumb in later. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 fingers. Right, then we're going to have some sort of bunching and stuff there. Comes through. And we're going to sort of see, again, that kind of thing there. Something like that, right? Probably work. Again, some other wrapping, sort of skinny type mage guy, right? Shadow. So again, I'll come back to that hand if if I get time. So some kind of patterning or something under there. Then we got some sort of like belt or sort of wrapping up here. Got this coming, this belt over here. Right, belt buckle, belt. Let's think about where that sword thingy is going to go. Bang, bang. Right, and this thing, which I don't know what this is. This is just some stupid thing I'm drawing. That's a bit fantasy-esque. That kind of helps with just kind of breaks up shapes. Again, that's draw that. Can sneak that in, which is basically the same thing. Put a little sort of something down here attached to that belt. Let's have another sort of pouch over there. Another pouch over there. Got this thing. Again, same thing over here. Right, and we've got, again, sort of a tunic thing. Maybe give it a color or something. Now we need shadow. Shadow. Right, again, some sort of shadow here. Shadow there. Cast shadow. Shadow under this thing. Some sort of texture or something on here. Right. So again, it's not like a giant sort of sword or anything, but I really like in the again in a lot of the Lord of the Rings depictions, Gandalf kind of has a sword, right? And it's like, well, what's he need a sword for if he's a magician, a wizard, right? So again, a bit of a shadow here. Not buying that, but I'll kind of do. What happened to that cursor? There we go. And again, some sort of random, non-historically correct knee pad thing. That again, it's another one of those things. It's like these. It sort of breaks up the shapes, but not really something that would have existed. And again, some pretty basic sort of fantasy style shoes. I'm assuming no one's going to look at this stuff down here too much. One can hope. And, look, I mean, I'm in control of this, so I can make them not look there, hopefully. Again, let's rough this up a little bit. Might be a bit much. Alright, same thing here. So again, my spidey sense tells me this is, a place of danger, mostly as it relates to maybe having the legs not feel like they're the right size. Gotta make sure that's gonna work. I zoomed up, didn't I? Oh man. Not meant to be doing that. All right. So this is not how, this is how I'm doing it. It's not how it should be done, right? We should probably, you know, if you're trying to draw legs and you haven't done a whole pile of comics and stuff like that to kind of help you get muscle memory with these kind of areas, you know, I definitely rough that in, right? Do you know what I mean? We're skipping giant sort of steps here from an educational standpoint, right? This is definitely not how I think one should draw or sort of, you know, learn to draw. This is just how I'm drawing right now. All right, now that I've got that, I'm sort of zoomed out. Let's get that guy. Bang. All right, so check. Does it feel like this leg is bigger or smaller than this one? Maybe. I don't think it does enough for me to worry about it, but look, you know, I think that's definitely one of those areas where you do want to kind of check a little bit, right? I think this thing needs to pop out a bit. Again, I don't know what that is. So some sort of knee pad thing that probably doesn't make much sense, but it kind of looks cool. Yeah, that's no good. So we sort of got that, and then again, I sort of need to introduce, I think, right, like more. I don't know whether that's going to help much, but it feels a bit better to me. I'm going to leave it before I start to vacillate and worry about it. All right, so try and draw this thing. So I'm checking the other monitor. Just to make sure this kind of stuff, you know, is sort of working, going in the right direction. And yeah, I'm taking the approach I'm sort of taking is kind of, you know, like finish an area and then, you know, that's it, right? Like it's kind of done. Shadow there or something. You know, like try and get through something. You know, call it a day and then move on, right? Like, and basically, like, you know, the idea is I'm not going to touch that character again, right? That's done, basically. Now, again, this will be a cool, fun shape, right? So, you know, it's worthwhile playing around with it a little bit. So just kind of thinking about, again, these ones are sort of going that way. Oh. Yeah, so I'm kind of sort of like this thing's coming at you, right? as opposed to them feeling like sort of barbs or something. So again, I'm having to, move my body a fair bit to kind of get these lines in. Stuff's not coming super natural or anything. But the key there is I kind of want it like that. There's certainly like rotating the canvas is sort of useful, but there's also a speed that comes with kind of just being able to sort of think about where the next stroke is going to go and not moving that canvas around like a crazy person. Getting those weird Photoshop lines and things. So I'm playing around with sort of different textural sort of elements, right? Kind of play around with, again, making it feel a little bit less orderly. Yeah. All right. Let's have a go. Just trying to, again, make these shapes as interesting as possible. Because one of the things is, like sort of like in general, I sort of want, right, I want that form to move. So again, I'm going back on that, what I was sort of saying about, moving the canvas, because I feel like, yeah, what we're sort of missing is some sort of movement, right? Some sort of strokes that are sort of showing that movement. All right, these are looking a bit static, right? It's like this thing should feel like it's really, really moving, right? Like this sort of aggressive energy to it. I feel like some of that is. And also, if it's kind of, again, I'm not sure. Yeah, this is still, sort of doing design on the fly, right? But there's some sort of part of me that's like, yeah, thinking a little bit about, do I want it to feel orderly or not, right? Like maybe it's kind of just sort of growing uncontrollably. Right, and again, also the idea that, it's not just sort of it's not just this sort of static thing, it's not, right, that it kind of has, right, dimensionality to it, right, like striations, right, like there's sort of muscles in there. But, all those ideas that I'm thinking about are things that, right, are going to sort of play into what's happening with the thing back there, right? So it's sort of like, really, I should be designing that first, not this first. That's actually probably not a bad idea, hey? I should be doing that first. Let's think about it. So again, I'll be able to tell, a big part of the depth story by getting the the sense of sort of detail right here, where sort of these details get sort of smaller as they go into the distance. So I might do another pass on this later, right? It's I'm gaining a lot of information from, again, doing some of these kind of marks here, but also looking at the second screen, right? So sorry, this is not a good visual for you. And also there's the other thing that I feel like also is kind of like happening, where it's sort of like, that sort of octopus style thing where, the texture is kind of on one side of it a little bit more than the other, right? That might be something sort of worth thinking about, but a big part of making this work right is playing around with the visual hierarchy, the 1, 2, 3 read, and some of this stuff, I want it to feel a little bit sort of more blurry, right? I don't want to sort of focus on it too much. Drawing rocks. So rocks are one of those things where, again, I probably will do this in a few passes, right? Could you just kind of nail those silhouettes and then go in there later. Again, I do like the idea of kind of this being like some sort of temple or something like that that's kind of collapsing, right? So some of these things maybe feeling like they were kind of actual architectural bits or sort of bricks or whatever. But again, it's all about time, right? Like how much time, because it's sort of, if you do that and it works, that's great. If we do that and it doesn't work, then it's kind of like wasted time. It doesn't actually make it look better, and that's really the key, is right, like what's gonna make a difference. So, I think one of the things that will make a difference, right, is being able to kind of flat out some of these sort of separate little bits and pieces. Right, can often be quite useful to kind of have those as separate layers, because you can easily kind of, again, fit, different sort of tonal structure in here. This is the background. It gives us a super solid read. Right, because again, that there's just sort of stuff that will kind of happen, right, as part of the coloring process. And it's really good to have a selection or two like that we can use to sort of push colors and stuff. But yeah, those lines I drew there, that's a tricky one, right, because those lines I drew there are almost completely useless to block in these rocks. But without it, right, it's like, what do you do? Yeah, again, these are all sort of generic rocks and things. Really just there to frame the action a little bit. Give us a, like a slight sort of foreground contrast read. Going to put in some sort of shading and stuff here, so that I can do a little bit less sort of shading there, right? Don't need to do anything crazy with the colors. There'll be enough there to kind of make it work a little bit. That's probably a bit much, but we'll kind of leave it. It's a little bit, that's probably just a bit sort of not abstract enough, right? Sort of trying to be tonal, but we don't really have anything there. Probably better to be a little bit more abstract with those marks. All right, one foreground rock to go. So maybe I'll try and make this one feel like, right, it is part of something, or it sort of was part of something with a few chunks out of it. Some kind of writing or something on it. Put in a few more. Right, sort of, again, fade out. Right, sort of just sort of blend in this foreground, right? So it often looks really weird if it's just like just big, chunky sort of rock or something like that, right? That will often feel a little bit weird and like it feels too abstract, right? So it's almost like the silhouette has got to tell the story of rock by itself, right? So like the idea that there's, again, right, like these little pebbles and things. that's pretty much it though. Okay. So again, so that's like the first main layer. I mean, I do feel like that leg's a bit short. We'll see whether it's a major thing. So now it's just a matter of, again, drawing the background, drawing this thing, this giant tentacle monster. Save that. Close that. All right. All right, no, I lie. We're not quite done. Still got to do that guy. And I feel like, again, this thing is bothering me. I think what has to happen is it's sort of got to come down there like that. Right, something more like that. And again, I mean, there's this line there. I'm not sure what was happening with that line exactly. Clean this up a bit. And yeah, we're also going to have, again, some sort of extra stuff hanging off here. Kind of plus his silhouette a bit. And again, that needs putting in. So again, I'll do a little cleanup pass on this guy right at the end. Got a couple of lines here that probably, don't need to be there. And yeah, I'm gonna have a go at that magic. But let's make a new layer. Right, so I think in general, right, I think it should just be like a magical sort of energy, but maybe like with some other sort of bits. Who knows? We can always edit that if we need. Get rid of some of this. Again, most of this can stay in, right? It's not gonna hurt anything to have it in. But just for the sake of it, and yeah, so again, just making those tweaks, and got to do this guy. it's got to be coming the other way, right? And at some point, again, probably just have to keep going, get going with this stuff. Just draw whatever. I think this can rotate the other way, basically. All right. All right, now I think that's done. All right, so what do we got here? Got this stuff. So this is again where I feel like, using a process that's a little bit more, a matter of just kind of like sticking it on the page and, drawing small, I think is a really good way to get it sort of happening fast. So, all right, that's kind of like the zoom I had on that before. And yeah, what I think I'll try and do is just sort of draw pretty much as much of this as I can at that zoom level. So now it's kind of like, just a forest of tentacles. Just got to draw a whole bunch of these. And yeah, again, there's sort of law of diminishing returns, right? At some point, it's going to be hard to say whether, like really fussing around with them is going to make a huge difference. Because they're just really going to be silhouettes. So I'm trying to, again, I want this sort of stuff to be sort of fairly sort of dark, right? I want to sort of add a lot of texture with the brush, with the pen. I don't want to sort of do sort of shading and stuff like that, right? I want a lot of it to be done at this phase. Again, got the kind of the eye. Happening there. Again, I do want to try and show the depth there and the texture, right? And again, this needs to be this is a major read, probably like secondary read. But yeah, the idea is like these little sort of spikes, right? Like these sort of spikes are like quite small, right? Over here, so it's not like Not like we're going to see them a whole bunch. And again, are they like octopus tentacles? Are they kind of just like what are they? Again, just experimenting. Not much to say. Just trying to get a feel for like how to tell this, how to tell the story of the texture, basically. Because again, once you sort of get this stuff, right, like once this kind of thing sort of sinks in, you can really just iterate, just kind of do, it's like the same thing just a million times, and I feel like sort of once we sort of get the feel of it, once we get feel for sort of what's happening here, goes a lot quicker. Now which one went over which one there? That one's got to go over, right? And again, which it's kind of right, like that one's kind of going a little bit away from us. One, two, three. So again, trying to play with scale. Maybe have a whole bunch of like little sort of mini tentacles and things. Feels a little bit more just creepy. And again, just playing with scale, right? Got to tell that story of how big this thing is. Where is this one going? What is this doing? I think that's this one's sort of got to end. It's got to sort of disappear behind the hole there that this guy is kind of right sitting in, is kind of back there. But I'm just going to sort of indicate it here because I don't want to sort of interfere with this guy too much, right? I want to sort of, again, respect the space around there. And this is, this stuff's quite tricky because, again, like, this is a good example of what, the thumbnail just doesn't have any of this stuff in it. It just doesn't have that level of detail, and, nor should it. It's a thumbnail. But, this is the kind of stuff that, you can add, right? When I'm in there and I'm actually sort of drawing it, it's like, oh, that looks kind of cool or creepy. Let's do that. That does not look good, hey? I think it's just kind of too busy. So yeah, this is where I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen here in terms of, again, showing through the, the stuff behind. All right, like, again, I was sort of saying I want to kind of have the, I want to be able to kind of have a clean sort of silhouette here so I can flat that out. Ooh, I'll figure that out later, right? And got sort of, one sort of going up here. That's not working. These need to actually line up a bit better. So just leave the variation for other ones, right? This needs to tell the story of overlap, right? This doesn't need to be the most interesting tentacle. And again, a lot of this is, like, gets sort of fairly subjective, but also, pretty important, right? To get, like, to figure this out, like, what is the pattern? Like, are there still these long things over here? Or is that kind of only just sort of happening here, right? Even, I'm not sure, right? Like, should there be anything there? That kind of, that kind of messes with the scale a bit. And again, we want read here. We want the focus on this. So maybe it could be some sort of abstract stuff, right? So again, the way to make a lot of these decisions is just to think about what's my primary read, where do I actually want people to look, what's the most important thing, right? That can help to solve lots of those things, right? If I kind of look at it, I'm like, oh, that just something about it is not right. Yeah, because again, like, the thing is like, oh man, we should, I need to put detail everywhere. We don't need to put detail everywhere. We just need to put it in the right spot. Where's the right spot? Where we want people to look, right? So it often means, again, some of these are going to get less detail. Oh, sorry, banging the mic. Again. So there is going to be sort of some rocks and other paraphernalia here. And maybe, maybe a fair chunk of them, right? Kind of flying in the air. Show the idea that, again, this thing's kind of like busting up. Right. So what was I doing? I was meant to be at like this zoom or this zoom? Yeah, that zoom, but stop moving around. So I feel like, again, that's side of this thing is kind of done. So again, going to try and leave this bit here a little bit empty. Right, because that's kind of where, right, like this is sort of coming from. So I want this to kind of be, yeah, a little bit empty. As in, devoid of any specific sort of detail, right? It's sort of empty and full of texture. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't hate it. It's going alright. Just hopefully I don't jinx myself by saying that. Keep moving around. Keep it there. I like that. The reason it's important to keep it there, and the reason I keep focusing on that is part of what I'm trying to do is balance the details that I'm adding over here with everything else, right? And I can see it on the other screen, right? But I feel like there's something that naturally happens, and I'm not saying it's like again, I'm not saying it's like universal, but for me, it kind of tells me to do the right thing, right? My brain kind of does the right thing when I sort of do it that way, right? Because it's kind of like, I sort of can see over here, I can kind of gauge that, that stuff over there that's happening. Again, I want this to be sort of clean. Thing. right? So again, it's like just being able to see this on, I can see it on the second monitor. I'm often surprised the difference this sort of thing makes, right? Just kind of. So I've got to draw it over here. But yeah, I feel like a lot of excessive detailing sort of happens because I think that thing should be coming at us a bit more. Yeah, I feel like a lot of excessive detailing can happen because, you know, we're sort of like zoomed up and your brain is just like, oh, yeah, okay, I need heaps of detail there, don't we? Because there's, you know, can't see anything else on the page. And so it's like you sort of compose for this, right, as opposed to sort of this. And I think that can be problematic, right? So I think it's always good to kind of get the zoom you kind of want. And stick to it, right? Just naturally. And look, like, you know, I'm not saying never move it, but like, you know, I do find often if I'm adding too much sort of nonsense and unnecessary detail, then, you know, it often does just come down to that sort of basic stuff, right? So I've sort of got rocks here. Gotta again deal with this sort of shadow here. All right, this one's coming there. It looks okay. Like, I'm confident that will kind of work all right. I'm just going to break this shadow up a little bit more, though, because I feel like that's just, again, that's just a bit kind of harsh. So just that sort of outline of it. So again, I don't know where that tentacle's going. I'm like, where is that going? Maybe I'll just sort of create like another sort of crack or something like that it's sort of going in here. Right, like got some sort of rocks here. So again, just blocking that in, I'll probably come and play with that later because, again, saying exactly the same thing as I said before. Right, hard to gauge that detail unless we're sort of looking at everything at once. overlapping shapes, primary compositional device. Maybe, again, not too many. Trying to make them not look uniform. Not sure if I should create that. I think I need to draw everything behind there as on a separate. I think I probably do need a background layer like that to put all that sort of junk on. That'll help me a lot, I reckon. So I've got to make sure these guys are tiny. See, that's exactly the kind of stuff. Just it's too much. So again, there's like quite a lot of this on the other side. I feel like we could kind of again play that up. Nope, too much. All right, so it's pretty much there. We need some. Again, we need to kind of put in some sort of rocks and things, like a bit of that kind of environment. And again, gonna need to detail that stuff out a fair bit. And again, part of it will be making sure that shadow kind of wraps around the right kind of stuff. So I feel like, again, some feeling that like the ground is sort of cracking a little bit, or sort of thing, kind of help. Again, sometimes it's just good to have Put some lines in there. Again, so a lot of this stuff needs like a little bit more. But again, super hard to tell. Like, it's very easy to add too much at this stage. And this is all going to be on. This is all going to be on one layer, right? So there's no advantage to having, you know, any sort of solid shapes or anything, right? It's all going to be one giant mess. Which is kind of good, right? Like it's you need to have some of that stuff, I think, where you can kind of do what you naturally want to do and just sort of draw without thinking like, oh, is this gonna, you know, is this gonna affect this layer, or is this gonna do this? I kind of like the idea of I kind of liked the idea of it maybe being like, again, in a dungeon, having flagstones or, you know, some sort of things like that, but I don't think that's going to happen. So again, that's coming. Just make sure I'm on the right layer. You never know, I've done this so many times where you kind of draw a whole bunch of stuff and then realize everything is on the whole wrong layer. So just stepping back, looking at it. Yeah, I think overall, I think it's working all right. So again, I'm just gonna focus on, yeah, so it's probably not going to be something where I'm going to be able to sort of finish this in one sort of video. Otherwise it'd be, you know, giant sort of 4-hour video, so probably be a two-parter, right? I sort of got stuck in the line work and I liked what was sort of happening with that creature, so yeah, we sort of crossed the Rubicon in terms of being able to, you know, get it done in a few hours, which is kind of what I was thinking. I was like, oh, maybe we could do it in, you know, get it all sort of done in a few hours, but no, I don't think so. But that's all right. You never know, right? You know, sometimes I'm sort of surprised how quickly things can get done. You know, other times, yeah, it just sort of drags on and on and on. So, yeah, I don't feel like doing that. So let's just get these lines done. And then we'll check out what we've got and take a break. So again, tricky to know how much of this sort of detail to put in. I want to sort of blend this with these guys a little bit, right? Also some sort of sharper rocks and things. So I'm placing a few things that are going to help me tell the story of what's happening with the shadow, right? Because this guy is going to have again, some sort of stuff in shadow, and I feel like the shadow in general is going to be quite useful. I always feel like doing it on a separate layer, just so I don't accidentally, just because I feel like it could be sort of tricky. What's going on with these lines? What was I doing here? So yeah, let's try new layer, and I'm just gonna sort of put in again, kind of like a bit broken set of lines, set of outlines for this. Again. This is where again, let's zoom out. Creating sort of abstract marks that aren't, basically I want the sort of shadow lines and things not to really be mistaken for anything else. So it's sort of texturally a bit different. We've got some that are in light, right? Some that are sort of in shadow, and then we got again this thing, right? It's kind of casting its own shadow again in shadow, in light. Shadow. Shadow. This one's got to go over. Right, that one's got to go. All right, I'm back here. It's going to go over there. So with this, I'm utilizing second monitor a lot to just check and see, is that working any good? Because I kind of need to be close up here to see. Just to kind of see what's happening. It's hard to know how much sort of speed line, I should sort of put in here, whether I should make it a little bit more, again, sort of ponderous. Again, so that guy's in shadow, that guy's not. Alright, this one's going to be in shadow. yeah, I'm going to go for like, again, not having it be super dynamic, right? Because again, it could be sort of like that, it's sort of moving and feeling like, it's the, right? Let's try it. Okay, this will just be me experimenting, right? Like, does it work well like this or not? Again, in shadow, not in shadow. Just helping me tell that story. So there you go. So is that too much? Maybe. I think that could be a little bit more sort of, stated. And then I'm just going to play around with, again, adding a bit more texture. And I'm still doing this on that second layer. Yeah, I don't know. Right, is that? It's going to be pretty dark. I mean, it's not really going to matter. That just looks a bit messy. I think I'll leave it like that. Let's go back to there and start adding detail to these rocks. So, yeah, I think this is a situation where, I'm going to try being a little bit more further out. So I feel like, this general problem, right, of not being, of sort of, trying to put in detail, and sort of balancing detail with like the rest of everything. I feel like this will eventually go away a little bit with sort of 4K or in the future kind of 8K screens. I think we'll be able to do a much better job of this in the future, just because you'll be able to sort of more like a traditional sort of drawing experience where we can see what we're doing at the same time. It's a lot easier to gauge the detail that way. So again, I'm adding a bit of shading right here. That's sort of trying to again, it's a bit of an experiment for me. Normally I'm sort of well within the kind of clean line realm, but just want to add a bit of stuff here. So again, we're pretty much done. I feel like that's a bit much. So again, just putting these little textural marks on the ground will really help to sell that space a little bit. Again, that super rough, right? But I feel like that often that's all you need. That one's in the light. want this to be a bit darker. Alright, I'm kind of finished / sick of this, of drawing little rocks and things. Alright, let's have a quick go at adding a layer right behind this. Because again, like horizon is a little bit, it's above this guy, I think. And what I want to do is, again, not have nothing there, right? It will be sort of a bit tricky if there's sort of nothing there. And also, I want to sort of try, again, adding some sort of texture there, right? Because again, remember, this is going to be dark, so you know the idea is like if I add a bit of texture here, maybe it'll help fill in that area, right? Again, make sure, like, am I actually drawing on? Yeah, that needs. I'm like, no, I'm drawing on the right one, but it was a little bit sort of funny. So again, weird kind of textural technique, right? You know, I'm sort of being very, almost like childlike with it, right? Just kind of scribbling in. Again, got to remember, it's going to be in the background. It might help us, might not help us. At the very least, we can fade it out. And I've done sort of similar stuff, right? Similar sort of textural stuff, you know, in sort of pencil work, and I found it kind of, right, you know, it does kind of help a little bit. I'm not sure how much it's going to help now with this. Whoopsie. I feel like that stuff in there could be more. Whoop! No, that stuff can kind of stay. This stuff, though, I feel like, right, this could be more directional. I kind of like the idea of it all kind of, again, pointing to the creature. Just kind of, again, going against that, but maybe again, just push it in one direction. so here again, I've got that idea of here's the horizon. Don't know what's sort of happening behind that. There's something there, but again, some sort of more rocks and stuff like that, but it's all getting sort of faded out. Yeah, I think. What you doing, Photoshop? Oh, there we go. All right, so yeah, I think again, it really needs to be like sort of, right, like speed lines going this way. Right, that's where I'm seeing it kind of. That's where I'm seeing it work. Yeah, all right. So again, I feel like that's probably where we need to leave it for the moment. Yeah, cool. All right, let's jump into the color for this one. So I'm just going to go through the simple process of separating out the layers. And before I do that, I'll save a copy, which is always a good idea. There we go, saved. And yeah, the basic idea is I'm going to group all this stuff. We can get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of layers. Although probably that and this will go on one. So yeah, we'll start by, and there's a couple of these areas where there's a bit of sort of junk everywhere. A good way to help that is, again, I just need the selection mostly. So if I get that and again, just kind of crunch that down and crunch that down, right? That'll probably give me a decent, oh, no, I think I might need to move that in a bit. Let's try that. So now selecting the white, and again, this is sort of simple, efficient process for lining color. It is these little things that really allow me to create stuff at speed, and also just not to slow down, to not sort of get caught up on little bits of process stuff, and it just takes a little bit longer. It's good to be able to just flow through. But yeah, I'm basically just getting a quick mask. I'm just gonna create a selection based off what is not sort of the exterior white, But obviously there's a couple of these lines that are sort of, closed, right? So it's selected the lines in that case and not everything else. And again, you can clean this up ad infinitum, but I'm just going to do a pretty basic sort of job of it. Again, because we're in concept sketch sort of style, so we want to prioritize speed over final polish to a certain degree. And again, I'm not entirely sure what sort of style this will be, whether we will have some sort of shading or whether I'll just sort of keep it all 100% sort of flat. I feel like I'd like to try and make it flat. That's often sort of what I'll kind of do, but often also when I am working in a line and when I am working in concept art, I'm often trying to add a little bit more rendering, because that kind of often helps. It often sort of helps to again sort of maybe leave the lines even like sketchier than this, but sort of add a little bit of form and stuff. So again, a lot of that final look really depends on what I'm sort of doing, whereas my like internal bent is to try and push the flat sort of style as far as I can, basically because it's less work and it's something I always aspire to. So there we got these. Now let's run an action on that. Wait for that to finish. Let's hide the levels. I've got this lines. Let's group that. This is again typically how I do this. Let's fill that with a slightly lighter tone so we can see what's going on. Yeah, I've still got that there, but I can run the same sort of layer action on that, and that'll turn that into again its own sort of group with those things in it. Now what I'll do is I'll duplicate that and we'll put those lines in there, and then I'm going to go Control E, which sort of merges that down, and then I'm going to alt click between those layers, right, and that sort of locks, right. Basically got this, right, and we lock that there, and then bang, we're sort of back to where we were. This just gives me a little bit more flexibility, right? I feel like I can kind of fade this out, you know what I mean? I can maybe sort of get rid of it. I don't know. We'll see. But it also might be, it might have been worth sort of, doing it differently. Like and having this kind of as its own separate shape. That might be sort of good, but for the moment, that's kind of what I've done. If I was to sort of, again, show you how that would work, I'm not sure whether that's going to be worth doing or not. So yeah, let's just leave it like it is. But yeah, there's lots of ways. Having stuff on layers is good, right? Makes things very flexible. All right, so again, the shadow is basically still part of that thing, and what I'm doing here is I'm basically selecting all of the white again, or what I sort of want to not be part of my layer, which is all these things. Now I'll turn that on because this allows me to kind of see, all right, like how much of the stuff underneath I need to pay attention to. Just draw a line down there because that'll help me sort of gauge. just what's what. So doing this is a skill unto itself. Again, it takes a while to kind of figure out what you're doing and, like how to do it sort of quickly. It's not sort of an instant, easy thing because we're juggling the quick mask and, how to sort of deal with it. Again, this is the sort of technique that, I always cover in my sort of, proper sort of courses and tutorials, how to sort of wrangle these kind of things in detail. But there's a bunch of little things that we're kind of doing, and a bunch of little things that save a lot of time. But the basic idea is we're just creating a selection with the selection tools, in this case with Quick Mask, and I'm going to use that selection to create a flat shape similar to that one that I created before. That's basically the long and the short of it. That's the goal. Again, how you get there doesn't matter. If your Photoshop sort of skills are, sort of more limited, you're still learning that stuff. Or again, different programs have different qualities of selection sort of tools. One of the reasons I do, still use Photoshop primarily is because it is like a high-end sort of photo manipulation tool. It has really good selection tools, and they have gotten a lot better. I mean, you couldn't do this with Photoshop 5 or 6 or whatever. Like, just its ability to select and the algorithms underlying everything just were not as good. So in that case, again, to finish my thought or my suggestion is just do it by hand, right? Just paint these shapes that I'm sort of using the lines to help me create. You can do just as good a job by doing them by hand. And that just means, again, that's probably something, again, you can see in a lot of, line and color tutorials. People just sort of paint the flats by hand. Doing it this way has a few advantages, again, but really only if you're needing to animate stuff or have it on separate layers, right? It gives you a slightly cleaner selection. Yeah, so it is kind of good. All right. So I'm going to this is one of the things, get out of Quick Mask. I'm going to merge that down. Let's get back into Quick Mask. And let's run that layer that way. Run that action, sorry. Go. And now we got that one. So all I need to do there is, again, run the lines action on it. And there we sort of go. So again, what we wanted though is we wanted this back to be like really sort of dark, right? And then we sort of wanted this to kind of be even darker, right? And again, this was kind of right, it was kind of like really kind of creepy and dark. Let's see if I can find that little thumb. Is it going to be in here? There we go. Let's drag. Actually, I'll just drag that up straight there. You can then get rid of all that, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so again, kind of had like this. Right, that's kind of light. So again, already we're kind of out of flat land. So again, this thing was kind of, which is sort of weird, right? It was sort of right lighter than this somehow. And that was kind of, for some reason, right, sort of darker too. And then right, this is kind of so yeah, something like that. So again, tricky to know how to start this kind of thing. Again, what was this guy? This guy was kind of in the middle. So again, so it's a little bit tricky because I got everything's kind of on that same layer. But yeah, so again, this is pretty. Pretty dark overall. So that's like one of my questions, right? Is like, is it too dark? Is the whole thing too dark? Again, let's try and match. All right. Well, I mean, it's something. Yeah. Let's see what we can do. So, yeah. So basically, I feel like again that's sort of close to what we want tonally. But let's think about again what sort of. What sort of color we want, and again, the question that's always on my mind when I'm doing this is like, is this too grey? Right? Is this too muddy? Because then it's always comforting to create sort of muddy, grey images, because they're kind of safe, right? It's like nothing's going to go wrong. So this is just total experimentation, right? I don't pretend to know what this is going to look like, whether any of it will work. I feel like we do need a good thing to do if things are looking, if I'm like, I want him to kind of have, again, that sort of dark tanned sort of elf skin thing. Again, like white hair just sort of works nicely with that. And we need a couple of things to prove that we're not just making it all mushy and grey and dark because we don't know what we're doing, right? I've got to sort of prove that. Right, so that can help. This feels that does feel a bit harsh though, relative to everything else, but again, maybe we could make it like a little bit. But yeah, you can instantly see that, like, as soon as we do that, then the skin feels way too dark, relatively speaking. So it's always good to, again, put in some sort of lights, right, that are, again, going to sort of bounce off everything else. Make sure everything's going to work together. Cool. So yeah, probably need to, again, edit the selection a little bit where I've got sort of, those selections work a little, again, you tend to modify your selection process depending on whether you're going to do sort of light against dark or dark against light. Or we can just punch the lines. There's a couple of things we can do. All right, we can also just separate the lines from everything else so they're not sort of clipping, because the clipping is part of what creates that. Again, lots of different options. So again, other things we could do would be to, make a sort of a big, strong sort of statement color for the cloak or something similar. So let's have a go at that. But again, this is just experimentation. And a lot of it is like, how much time do I have? How much do I want to play around with things? Line and color style is great for playing around with things, and the techniques that I normally use sort of bias that, because that's sort of my approach, right, to doing it. So again, the question is like, is that too much? Don't know. Don't know. So let's do something else. Let's think about, again, I'll let my subconscious chew on that. And all I'm going to do to kind of fill out his sort of clothing and stuff is to modify the values and the warm and cool of everything. Right, so just go around and sort of change some of these things, and I might again do some of that to make a selection. Now I've just got flat, 100% flat colors, no anti-aliasing, no nothing, and I hide that selection. Control U on PC brings up hue saturation. I can sort of modify that stuff, right? Make it more again, I think that just kind of made it more red. Let's do these belts. But yeah, very sort of easy way to sort of start is, as I said, I've kind of, I sort of roughed stuff in, with that big gradient. So I'm kind of like, well, look, the whole image kind of works a little bit after I did that. I need to take that out, hey. Let's just, again, that works. Just take that, select it. What's I saying? Yeah, so the whole image kind of works all right. It's sort of like, oh yeah, that looks kind of cool. Just from like, like it looks pretty close to what I'm sort of planning on doing with those big sort of airbrush marks. So here that won't work quite as well. But all I'm going to do is there's a bit of messy stuff there. I'm just not going to be silly and kind of put that there. All right, we'll just kind of pretend that's not there. that needs to be clipped. Alright, so basically I'm just going to create some sort of blue magical sort of thing. Just blocking that in. I'll think about it later. Just sort of thinking like, again, so doing that I was looking at different monitor, right, sort of gauging that. But yeah, just like how much, like what is going to link this stuff together? Like will there be some sort of compositional stuff sort of at play? Also, again, something worth playing with, right? It's like what? I'm gonna make another. Right, let's lower opacity there. Try and draw some of this sort of shadow there. Because I think the shadow is actually a pretty important sort of shape in all of this. And again, just experimenting with like what is going to be warm and what's going to be cool. So again, we can always go back and, you know, like if this turns out to be like, you know, a really sort of interesting or, you know, amazing illustration or something, we can always go back and redraw it better, you know. So again, what sort of, like, should it be kind of cool or warm? Typically cool shadows are going to be there if there's like a sky or something, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to have, you know. Anyway, I'll leave that as a layer because I'm not sure yet. So just going through, solving problems bit by bit. So again, just probably the key here is just going to be to make most of this stuff just feel like this guy's just sort of wearing leather, you know, leather stuff, like everything's leather. But yeah, we can maybe change the tonality of some of these things. I mean, I feel like that's meant to be leather too, but maybe like again change the tonality of that. Maybe that as well. Now, a lot of the sort of messiness here, yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where you would think it's going to really come back to bite me, but most of the time I find that stuff doesn't make any difference. Slightly more saturated, slightly darker boots. Probably a bit too saturated, a bit too dark. Another trick, I'm going to select a paint bucket, set to low opacity. I'm just going to kind of keep tapping them until they seem to fit. See, that looks wrong. That looks too colourful. Select those. Control H, Control U. Control H just hides selection. Yeah, so I think this guy basically just has to turn into a grey brown blob. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Right, when I keep looking at it, I'm like, we need a single statement, so we sort of look at stuff, but yeah, as a general rule, I think it needs to be pretty sort of boring. It's like, are these things going to be yellow in line with that, or what? Can't decide. Again, not sure if I like yellow capes for some reason, but we don't have to go sort of crazy with colors or shadows or anything, but it can be really good to just sort of separate, like again in this case, separate right, so the underside of the cape a little bit, just so it's like, maybe that like the inside of it is a slightly different material or something. Just adds a little bit. All right, let's add a bit of variety to the face, and I want to just kind of trying to move these things just away from being that background, right? So just moving stuff slightly away, just ever so slightly. No, I think Super Grey Pants works better. All right. So again, if we kind of like, if we sort of look at it, I mean, I think it's probably worth just doing a bit of sort of background before I start fussing around with anything. It's probably good to try a bit of background work. So what I'm going to do is sort of select a sort of a darker color. Slightly more saturated, and I'm just going to sort of go through and see if this will kind of work, right? That feels like that's a bit sort of dark. Maybe I could lower the opacity. So again, just lowering our opacity with the number keys. Adding a bit of sort of subtlety, but again, it's like, right, super quick. So it's just going to move it a little bit away from being flat. And again, a lot of these marks are quite sort of abstract marks, quite simple marks. We don't got time. So again, try and blend that in a little bit. I'm not using any blending modes or anything like that, just sort of painting low opacity. And my goal is, again, just to give us a bit of that sense of 3D space. Right, bit of subtlety. So I'm not 100% sure yet that like just 100% flat will work in this instance. I mean, it's still pretty flat, right? Like, I'm not really trying to push form, but again, there's sort of cartoony and then there's cartoony. That's not where that would be. We can just make it slightly darker. Again, I'm choosing to use very simple techniques, and I'm trying to stay like in a certain level of detail, right? If I start going over that level of detail too much, the whole thing is gonna start to ask questions like, why isn't this other thing detailed? Why is this thing detailed but this other thing isn't detailed, right? And there's a certain flatness here that I think works because, again, we're sort of trying to explain and describe something that's sort of dusty, as I was sort of saying. So again, mostly here, I'm just trying to find excuses to separate the top side of stuff from the other sides. Because again, that will help push. Seem to have lost my dark. Yeah, that will just help push form, right? Just helps make stuff look three-dimensional. So again, we could try, again, the idea is sort of maybe some, again, this is in my head, right? There is this kind of like faint sort of blue light on some of the stuff. I don't know why. Again, they're meant to be underground. There's no reflected light from the sky. But it's just a way to kind of separate form, top versus bottom. I'd probably say, like, I kind of gone a little bit further than I normally would with the lines here, right? The lines are like a little bit cleaner than I sort of imagined, just based on sort of the complexity of the image, Like it's a very sort of simple idea. And I'm hoping that the rough as guts way that I'm sort of shading this will come good. Again, I think I need... What's on that layer? Oh yeah, that thing. No, we need another one for that. What? I'm hoping I'll be able to basically hide all of that with some cheap tricks. And the primary cheap trick here, right? I think I remember. Oh yeah, I didn't put that in. Hey, We should probably put that in. The primary cheap trick is kind of not adding too much contrast, right? So I'm sort of separating the forms a little bit, you know, putting this kind of what do we need there? Yeah, so I'm kind of separating the forms a little bit with this, but not that much, you know. So it's not really, I'm not breaking it into the realm of sort of describing form. It's still two-dimensional, which is super important when we're doing this stuff. So again, this is, but it is sort of going away from sort of abstract. Right, we're moving away from sort of purely abstract, sort of 2D, right? Again, this is to me, right, in my brain. Most people are just like, dude, it all looks cartoony. What are you talking about? But to me, right, in my sort of continuum of sort of cartoony versus not cartoony, etc., etc. But yeah, again, I'm not sure how much kind of shading and stuff I kind of want on the character, right? That could easily make stuff look way worse. Yeah, not convinced about that at all. I feel like that would probably be better left alone, but we'll see. Just keeping it simple. Because again, there's a bit more sort of rendering and stuff on this character. So I don't necessarily need that. So again, probably a good idea is, again, being even less specific, right? So sort of not even, right, like not trying to be like, oh, this is this fold, right? Just kind of being more abstract with the character. Let's try that. What I mean is just instead of trying to sort of trace the forms that are there, right, if I just kind of be a lot sort of bigger with those strokes, it might sort of blend in with the rest a bit better. I think that might be the case. Again, do we want to add some tonality there? No, I'm going to leave that. Maybe under the nose. So we can add be subtle about it here. Probably nothing on that one. Again, putting a bit of that stuff on the floor as well. Don't know why it's blue on the floor. What about on this guy? Blue on him too? Maybe. I am just gonna, that's really annoying, but I sort of haven't forgot to put these in, and just playing around with that. So again, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's sort of what I was trying to do. Okay. But yeah, again, it's kind of needs some stuff. So I'm gonna try play around with again, just some basic sort of atmosphere. I'm gonna sort of make it again, sort of textural. Actually, I think this thing is still like 10 million pixels. Let's make that smaller. Doesn't need to be that small, but make it a little bit smaller. Cool. All right. Just because my brush, the texture brush I'm using is probably used to working at a particular resolution. All right, I'm going to make that way darker. Go across the bottom there. So again, that's going to create, that's probably, let's do that, but let's make this brush a bit smaller. So probably, again, my goal is that this will break up the that'll break up that sort of rough brushwork. I'm gonna make that, do that lighter bit on another layer. Because again, I feel like just kind of, again, pushing that dustiness idea. So I'm doing a bit of stuff, looking at a particular layer. Right, is that working? Is that not working? All right, and now again, and we're going to need to do, again, color adjustment pass. Anyway, but let's go. So I'm just going to sort of, again, now we're going over the top of the character and stuff. And this is in many ways just to kind of blend them in with everything. I'm just going to erase out some of that white stuff so he's kind of like sitting on that ground a little bit better. Just adjusting, looking. Want to push that character into the into the image a little bit more, right? So again, this is it's too much, right? But I'm just playing around with it and just trying to get that sort of initial balance right. Because again, I want sort of focus here, and so maybe like, again, fading out some of this other stuff is not the worst thing. So here I'm just going to select the bottom. Again, just kind of see if I can kind of push that back. So it's a bit less clear where that's kind of coming from. Same thing here. Some texture on these foreground rocks. So we can still use, right, like use these silhouettes to, push things back, right? I can easily, again, sort of extract this, selection of these characters. Ooh, I need that bit, but get that. Let's make a new layer. Put a mask on it. Maybe we'll try like hard light. Right, again, we can kind of just push that back a little bit if we want. So again, the layers really help to control stuff. And let's, again, just kind of, this thing's so dark. I think this will definitely be something where, again, I'll sort of wake up in the morning and be like, what were you thinking? This is just a dark mess of nothing. But again, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, it's like a dungeon, So the question is just, again, getting it just right. And often that's a matter of, just sort of dialing back some of these layers. That's kind of often a big part of the process for me, right? We sort of put these things in and then kind of like, wow, yeah, that was way too much. Yeah, so anyway, I feel like that's kind of like not too far off sort of what I was imagining, but I do think it'll probably require me to sort of come back to it to finalize that stuff. Yeah, so let's look at sort of that sort of general sort of color. Again, I find like often, what can be really useful to kind of shock it out of being, so sort of dull, right, is to play around with the general sort of warm and cool contrast. So again, if we sort of think about right, like what is warm, what is sort of cool within the image. can we sort of balance that? So again, this is functioning on localized color clusters. If I kind of turn that off, it's going to be a lot more uniform, which might be sort of what we want for that. So again, that's sort of pushing the warm shadows. Again, can we push the cool highlights? Or are we better off going in the same direction? So again, that's got kind of like a creepy look to it. So again, I'm just playing around with stuff, seeing whether again, I feel like it's just like that's just like a bit too much, right? Yeah, I mean, I feel like it works better to begin with. Maybe. Again, often if it's like, I've just reduced stuff really simply. I mean, I feel like that works better. Let's try. I don't feel like warming up those shadows is helping. Because again, it's so hard to fight that idea of sort of the the warm stuff kind of comes forward. So again, I feel like that is kind of, again, pushing those shadows back even further. And let's... So I'm going to turn on localized color clusters again, because that just sort of gives things a little bit more of a fine-tuned sort of look. It just makes it feel less sort of color graded. I kind of like that. I feel like that sort of looks, again, I want it to feel like sort of otherworldly and creepy, right? Like where are they? What's going on? Let's play around with sort of punching up the contrast of that that cape. Feels a bit more dramatic. Yeah, it's very one-sided, right? Right, can we get that looking sort of creepier? The question is like, can we do, again, other things that I often find kind of work pretty well. Running sort of gradients with an overlay over everything, again, can sort of help. It'll totally change the look of the image, right? It's not like a good thing. It can't, and it is kind of like a cheaty thing. Yeah, I do find that sort of can change things up, just make you think about it slightly differently. creepy purple. So I feel like, again, there's like something there, but again, might be good to just sort of get, right, sort of take these characters, take these characters kind of out of it, all right? So again, there's that sort of focus there. So again, we can sort of dial that back. All right, dial that back too. You could also do it, there's many different ways you could do that. To play around with that magic thing too. How do we do that? So I had it as a layer. There we go. So let's see if sort of making it right here is going to work. It's got a whole bunch of color adjustment stuff over the top of it now. Again, trying to like balance the blue over here with the blue here and the yellow with the yellow. There's no yellow over here. But yeah, we can potentially try and make that a bit more crazy. Again, just using simple tricks. Yeah, I mean the biggest trick is like the, if we sort of did the new layer, set it to color dodge. You can really make stuff sort of glow. I don't think we need to do that necessarily, right? But that kind of would, again, like often just a little bit will go a long way. Oh, that's a bit too much. Just a little bit makes it glowy. So again, it's kind of like it's not the best image, right? I kind of like it, but it's it's a little bit more. Yeah, it feels a little bit more like this is a particular scene in a video game or something like that. It doesn't have a lot of sort of scent. The whole middle of it is kind of empty, so it's a bit weird. But again, I'm not sure it's gonna be. Win all the awards for illustration and stuff. Again, I feel like that's too much. We probably don't even know whether we need that. That might even be too much of that. Wherever I put that. yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of what we had. That's kind of what I set out to do. Again, I do feel like I kind of want it to be that kind of creepy under, right? Sort of otherworldly look, right? Play around with stuff that can kind of give us that effect. Blur. Let's go with the line of motion, right? Like there. Smaller than that. Just kind of grit and dirt in the image. Lower opacity of all that sort of stuff I put in there because that was way too sort of harsh. Again, that just sort of makes it feel like, again, something's going on. So it can be useful to have a couple of really sort of big ones. Again, let's hit warp. Try give them some sort of arrange that so that there's some like interesting overlap. Yeah, I think like just that's like a bit. I'm gonna fade this out as well. This is like way too much, right? But I feel like it's just kind of. Looking a bit sort of clean. All right, probably enough fussing around. Again, hard to kind of tell what's going on. Worthwhile putting in, right, some some levels playing around with. Oh yeah, it feels like Photoshop's having a hissy fit. Let's hit that with just luminosity. And again, erase out those kind of areas. We don't want that focus to be lost. Right, and again, we could make it like way darker. Right, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, yeah, how far do we go? Right, like how dark and creepy does it get back there? Right, where you can barely tell sort of what's going on. I think that's where kind of you need to really think about. Again, what kind of monitor are we looking at? What's this going to look like, etc., etc. But I think overall that's looking pretty much how I want it, right? Again, if I want something different, I've got to probably draw something different. Cool. So yeah, I think that's about it. So the last thing I do is sort of add some noise and add my signature. All right, and that is done too. Signature floating around somewhere there. Okay, let's have another last vain attempt to put more stuff on this side of the image. Bigger. Yeah, cool. All right, that's it. Again, lots of sort of, a lot of these tricks, all the blurring and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole range of those things that I sort of use, and a lot of them I feel like again come in handy when I'm trying to hide the fact that stuff's sort of rough, right? So it kind of matches some of the rough painting to the rough line work. Again, covers up a lot of those sort of quick marks and stuff. There's other techniques and ways you can sort of get that same effect, but again, I don't do that if I'm sort of putting more time into it, right? We don't need to do that quite as much. But yeah, that's basically it. Again, there's a couple of things here that I'm sort of like, I keep sort of looking at, and I'm like, yeah, like I feel like, there's like maybe too many blurry things up the back there, right? That sort of make this guy like a little bit kind of hard to see. The sort of things like that we could kind of play around with. Not entirely sold on that stuff. But again, it is that sort of concept sketch thing. Lots of techniques that, I sort of go over in my sort of, full courses and tutorials. You can check those out. Photoshop says this file is too big. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you did some cool drawing and sketching as well. But yeah, that's sort of my process for creating a sort of a sketchy, concept style illustration with line and color. We probably hit 3 hours or something like that. So this is one of those things where if working on a game, or I'm trying to ideate some ideas for comics or things like that, I'll sort of just try and create scenarios, and really again just focus on story points and different things, and trying to get just trying to get those ideas from my mind onto the page and see what happens. Is this cool enough? Is this interesting enough? But yeah, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.